am sitting down to work on the fifth draft of this speech. It is January 6th, and the attack on our nation's capital is currently unfolding. I am horrified and heartbroken. There are no words I have to offer the page, so I call my mother and we go for a walk around the neighborhood lake. I sit down to work on the fifth draft of this speech again. It has now been 1 week since I took that walk with my mother, and I still can't sort through the heartbreak or the anger. So I go for another walk around the lake alone this time. I'm a confident person, but at the moment, self-doubt overwhelms me. Perhaps this is something you have experienced too. You think to yourself, who am I to talk about how we face our nation's challenges? I'm no political expert. What do I know about having the hard conversations? I am just one person. As I make my way around the lake, my mind grinding on the task of writing this, my internal monologue starts to shift. Am I a political expert? No, but I am an engaged citizen. I am just one person, true, but I am also part of a community which I care deeply about. Am I an expert in interpersonal relationships or communication? Nope, I am not that either. But I am a daughter, an aunt, a friend, a mentor, a colleague. And cultivating these connections has not always been easy. I am nothing if not committed to the task of nurturing these relationships and improving our democracy. So I decide that this is qualification enough. And if I have these qualifications, then you do too. Now, I would like to share the sixth, or maybe it's the seventh draft of this speech with you. I don't know, honestly, I've lost count. But regardless, I thank you for listening. Please raise your hand if you can swim. All right, nice, about half, a little more, not bad. Anthropologist Lauren Easley once said, if there is magic on this planet, it is contained in water. This has always been true for me. While swimming laps, I'm able to reflect honestly on my strengths and my shortcomings, as well as the experiences or relationships that I find challenging. Pausing between laps to float, I meditate on the rhythm of my breath, the sensation of my chest rising and falling below the water's surface. I take time to appreciate the privilege in my life that has allowed me this moment of being held by the water. And for a brief time, my mind is free to just imagine, totally unburdened by the complications that come with life on dry land. Recently, I've been reflecting on how my relationships have been affected by politics and imagining how a democracy that lived up to its ideals would function. So today I would like to share part of my story with you, along with a couple of facts about water, as any good librarian would. Fact number 1. The human body is approximately 70% water, and the earth is also roughly 70% covered in water. I find incredible comfort in this connection that we have to the earth. And so for the first part of this story, I would like to introduce you to the two sides of my family and the bodies of water where together we have found home, heart, and healing. I was baptized twice in 2 different churches, but having walked away from my faith in God many years ago in search of a deeper personal truth, my real baptism, my forever baptism, took place at Guernsey Reservoir in Wyoming. Unfortunately, on the first trip to Guernsey, no one in the group had the good sense to make a camping reservation or to think twice about pitching a tent on Windy Point, so we set up camp on a bluff overlooking the lake and make dinner. Exhausted from the drive and setting up camp, we settle into our chairs to eat when I am certain, at the age of 5 or 6, can only be accurately described as a tornado rolls in. I am scared and I am sobbing. While trying to pick the dirt that has been whirling around out of my dinner plate, my Aunt Kim is yelling at me to just eat it. I mean, who hasn't argued with a child about eating their dinner, right? She gives up the battle after both of our plates are fully engulfed in sand, and everyone is forced to abandon their meal to scramble around in the dark and retrieve our camping supplies that the wind has strewn about and tossed into the lake. We will commemorate this trip with a photo plaque bearing the inscription, "Trip from Hell," and tell this story over less sandy dinners for many years to come. Most ironically, though, Guernsey, Wyoming will become my family's Mecca, with an annual week-long pilgrimage there. Absent from this annual trip is my father, Charles Ariano. He is a formidable man. Like my Aunt Kim on my mother's side of the family, he is known for being boisterous, the life of the party, but also quick to temper. Though my father only picks me up a handful of times a year from my mother's house, we still manage to establish our own ritual at the local rec center, where before I can join the other children playing in the lazy river or on the water slide, I have to beat him across the length of the pool. I marvel at his ability to outpace me using only his upper body because of the extreme arthritis that has claimed his hips and his knees. You see, my dad, he is incredibly strong and even stronger willed. We have this in common, though he will always eventually let me beat him so that I can go and play. Something for you to reflect on. What relationships are important in your life? If they have been affected by politics, was there a time before politics entered the picture, and how would you describe these relationships then? Fact number 2. Did you know that water can be chemically synthesized to create jet fuel? Neither did I. So for this next part of the story, let's light something on fire. Throughout my teens and early 20s, my mom's side of the family will continue our annual lake trip. The group will expand and retract over the years, but the original group from that very windy first camping trip will always remain the same. These family friends have become simply family, and this trip is established as an anchor in my life. So I'm concerned as I start to notice a subtle shift in the campfire conversation. There's a tension developing there, and it's driving a wedge between the conservative right and the liberal left. Eventually, this wedge will become a fracture that will split our group in half, with my mother and I being forced to choose a side. Similarly, my dad and I no longer go to the local rec center together. Instead, I'm working around my college school schedule at his family-owned blue-collar bar. Weekday mornings at the restaurant are quiet. Before we would open, my dad and I would spend a little time worshiping separately and in our own personal ways. Taking a rest from the backbreaking work in the restaurant kitchen, he would retreat to his tiny office. Picture an oversized man with an oversized personality crammed into an office that was converted from a broom closet. He would sit there with his head bowed and read his Bible as I restocked the bar and whizzed through my flashcards on contemporary feminist artists. Once the morning to-do list was complete, I would seize on the opportunity to have his attention in these fleeting moments of calm and silence, eager to share about the strong, creative female artists that I was learning about and falling in love with. But no matter where these conversations started, they always ended up becoming a heated debate about personal values, family obligations, spiritual beliefs, and politics. Both of us being Aries and true fire signs, we seem to have forgotten to go to the water together, swim a couple of laps, and put out the fire in our bellies. After graduating from college, getting my career, my father and I go back to only seeing each other a handful of times a year, usually on holidays. When he passes away suddenly and we are forced to close the family restaurant, I am dumbstruck by how easily and immediately all of these past arguments just completely evaporate. And I'm left to wonder how our communication might have been made better. I still don't know, but I'm certain that it would have been worth the effort. We will spread his ashes on a peak overlooking a small mountain lake that I will swim the length of as a final gesture of reconciliation. Something for you to reflect on. Are the important relationships in your life that have been affected by politics worth saving? Imagine that you are floating and give yourself permission for a moment to let go of the how and identify your why or your why not. Fact number 3. Fire needs 3 things to burn: a fuel source, oxygen, and heat. Simply stated, water puts out fire in 2 ways: by smothering or cutting off the fire's oxygen supply, and by releasing the heat of the fire through steam. Some attribute the expression letting off some steam to this ability of water. Others attribute it to the safety valve in steam locomotives, which prevent them from literally exploding. I honestly believe that some things need to be broken or burned down in order to be built stronger, including relationships, maybe also democracies. The toughest part is working together to put the fire out and rebuild, if that is our goal. If it's not, then what are we doing? Just letting off steam? Poet Jane Keaton writes in Portrait of a Figure Near Water, "So it is when we retreat in anger, we think we burn alone and there is no balm. Then the water enters." This summer, only 4 of us, including my Aunt Kim and I, made it to Guernsey. But that intimacy allowed us to start reflecting on and rebuilding our relationship. While this is certainly still a work in progress, there are some familiar currents that guide us along the way. We both try harder to do more listening around the campfire than talking. Together and independently, we've worked to identify what convictions to hold on to and which we should re-examine. I find it's much easier to figure this out while reclining on an inner tube, allowing the current of the river to move me. Then there is the forgiveness we've granted, like that hard plunge into cold, crystal clear waters, a cleansing like being rebaptized or recommitted to my faith and family above all else, especially politics. My call to action for you is to reflect on one relationship in your life that has been burned by politics. Perhaps don't start with the most challenging relationship. Rather, start with the relationship that is most important to you. Maybe there are people that we are meant to move on from, or differences in beliefs that are so vast there is no way to build a bridge between them. But if you are able to identify a relationship that is worth holding on to, ask yourself what you need to put the fire out. In the book, Be Water, My Friend, The Teachings of Bruce Lee, his daughter Shannon Lee writes, "When we turn to water, we see a thing that is not in competition with its surroundings, but in constant co-creation and coexistence with it. The water doesn't desire to best the earth. The water simply is, and the earth simply is. Sometimes the water overtakes the riverbank, and sometimes the riverbank changes the course of the water. Maybe this is the place from which we need to begin having the difficult conversations. And right now, they all feel like difficult conversations." The organizations Citizen University, Braver Angels, Better Arguments, and Living Room Conversations are a great place to start looking for the additional tools you may need while facing these hard conversations. And when you are ready, please scale up as I have done here. Imagine the accumulative effect it could have if we work towards our democratic ideals by first reflecting on ourselves and our most personal relationships, and doing so honestly. Perhaps your reflection won't take place at the lake as mine did, so I invite you to the library. And while you are here, we would be happy to help you find a book on an experience or a perspective that you are struggling to understand. Might I suggest the aptly titled, "I Love You, But I Hate Your Politics." I'll close with a quote from Margaret Atwood. "Water does not resist. Water flows. When you plunge your hand into it, all you feel is a caress. Water is not a solid wall. It will not stop you. But water always goes where it wants to go, and nothing in the end can stand against it. Water is patient. Dripping water wears away a stone. Remember that, my child. Remember that you are half water. If you can't go through an obstacle, go around it as water does." Thank you.